Okay, here we go. Oh, wait a minute. Let me unmute you. Hang on. What's going on? How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm sleepy. I'm tired. I just woke up. I'm grumpy. I'm okay. I'm okay. What else? Well, you know, on this show, it's very raw, and we're not very formal and professional. It's no spit and polish. So depends on what aspect. It depends on what aspect you're talking to. Right now, I'm a little bit in my human, and I'm a little bit, you know.
You're allowed to be human.
That's right. That's right. Everybody is, you know, and I think that's a great starting point. I'm gonna find out about you, but we're not traditional, so we just go out of order. But yeah, everybody is allowed to be human. Now, I don't think that we, with the level of awareness and disclosure and awakening that we've had, that the excuse of, oh, well, I'm only human works anymore. But by the same token, we take 2 steps up, 1 back, 3 steps up, 1 back, 4 up, 1 back, and go easy on yourself and go easy on everybody else. Because if you start projecting, you're not protecting the boundaries of your existence. You're basically showing your ass. Okay, you want to take it from here because you don't want me to go any further.
Well, I don't. Where would you like to begin? Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with? I guess the starting point for me for this whole why we're here is if I was summing up in a word, it would be synchronicity. Because when Sifu Boggy, Paul Boggy Brighton, for those of you who are watching, do looking up on Facebook, he's fabulous. He always invites me to whatever interviews he's doing to be a co-host, and oftentimes I'm just not around. And at that moment, I was just about to shut down my iPad and a message popped up, and I looked at my watch and thought, actually, I can do that. So I had no idea who was speaking. I have no idea who the guests were, but I just thought I'd rock up anyway, because I'm sure it'll be fun. And there you were with the lovely Morgan. So synchronicity has always been a big thing for me. Took me probably 14 or so years to understand how it works in your life, but I became fascinated with that idea when I was 18 and I did A-level psychology, and we were introduced to Carl Jung. For different reasons, we were talking about, you know, human development, but I also then started reading around his theories on synchronicity. I've been hooked ever since. So I guess that's how I come to be sitting in front of you today.
You know, that's a great subject. I actually have not looked into him a lot. Here, let me put the link up real quick. Let me put the link up for those of you who are getting kicked off of Facebook. I want to go back to Carl Jung in just a second.
Go for it.
We're going to find out about you too. You know, oh my God, I'm so off my game right now. This is ridiculous. I haven't shared it out. Damn it. I would say GD, GODAMMIT, all lowercase, but I don't want to offend anybody. I'm a little off my game. I want to get this link up because we have had problems for about a month. Okay, copy URL. We're going to get back to Marilyn. Todd's going to drink some of this Cafe Americano. We're going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. So
I'm on your page. I can see us.
Yeah. So there's the link, everybody. I'll pin it real quick. God, I'm off my game. Yeah, I saw this thing the other day. I want to go back to the synchronicity thing because it is a huge thing. You know, it used to be like, oh, it's 11/11, you know, or oh, you know, I know you're in a past life thing, and I see you, you know. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying that God, so much of this stuff was cliche for so long. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts, that synchronicity is really that cookie crumb trail home. The other thing I love about him that I just discovered, and I should already know because I'm married to a shadow eater, okay, a professional shadow eater expert, was his dissertations and his writings on shadow work were, you know, and I've only seen just a little bit of it, but I mean, I watched some videos and stuff. Wow, yeah. But you've discovered synchronicities through Carl Jung's work years ago. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so when I was 18, I was at college, we did A-level psychology. We were looking at Jung and Piaget and Freud and all the usual suspects. However, when I was doing my research, we didn't really talk about it much in psychology, but I came across the whole thing about synchronicity and his story of the scarab beetle. And from there, I was hooked. But it took me until age 32, 33 to go, oh my God, it actually does operate in your daily life. Previously, I was just academically fascinated.
Yeah.
And then once I got into personal development, it became a living and breathing thing that does show up in the most fantastic and wonderful of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you're talking to me and my crown is all getting all tingly in the back of my neck. So we're on the right track. Yeah. I want to just say too, Morgan said it earlier, you know, you're a beautiful lady. It was really, that synchronicity of meeting you on Paul's show was really cool. The fact that I like the fact that he's spontaneous like that. He says, hey, whenever you want to host, just jump in. I like that. Because we try to do everything spontaneous here. Actually, we don't really have a choice. It just happens that way. But I love the energy that we had. And I just want to say, again, forgive me, because I just woke up from a mid-morning nap. But thank you for being here and showing up. I love this energy and honoring us with your presence and you know, sharing space with us.
Oh, well, thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you went to university, you studied the works of these people that you studied. So obviously you had some type of interest in personal development, maybe human development and supporting people in development. And I know that's kind of what you do. We'll talk about that toward the end of the show. But was there a point when you said, hey man, enough of this bullshit. This isn't real. You know, I mean, what happened?
Well, funnily enough, I had no interest in personal development and no interest in helping anyone because I couldn't even help myself. And I would, right up until the age of 32, I was very quiet. I was very shy, lacking in confidence, very low self-esteem. And at the age of 32, I mean, it sounds, when I say it now, when I've said it to friends, they're like, are you kidding me? But at the age of 32, I considered committing suicide because I'd had a bad relationship breakup. Now, of course, the relationship wasn't the only thing, but it was the catalyst that made me go, I can't cope anymore. And I was studying to be a chartered accountant. However, because I thought...
You were studying to be what? Like
a chartered accountant.
What's that, like a financial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That does not fit you. That does not fit you at all, man.
Well, one of the reasons I was doing that is because I thought stupidly that accountants didn't have to speak to anyone. So I thought I could hide behind paperwork. And then I started, and I'm like, whoa, to be a decent accountant, you've actually got to talk to people. So I signed up for what I thought was a communication skills course. And when I got the joining instructions, like the books and the manuals a few weeks before, I realized I'd signed up for an NLP course.
Right.
And I was like, and hypnosis, timeline therapy, and HUNA. And so I phoned up and I said, there's been a mistake. This isn't what I signed up for. Can I have my money back? And they refused to give me the money. They did a reframe and said, well, look, come to the training. If you don't get massive value, yada, 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 we'll give you a refund at the end of the 7 days. So now I'm hopping mad because I'm like, you've taken several £1,000s. Obviously, I gave it to them. And you're now going to waste 7 days of my time. So the reason I went is to get my money back. And for the first 3 days, I was just angry. And I just basically sat. And every opportunity, my hand was up asking a question because I was looking for loopholes. Because I'm like, there's no way you could talk to someone and change their life. I'm depressed. I've just considered suicide. And you're trying to tell me that you can talk me.
Yeah.
talked me round, talked me off the ledge. And then I hit a tipping point probably about day 3.5, where I figured if I just sat at the back with a face, as I call it, face like thunder, they're probably going to say to me at the end of the 7 days, you didn't play full out, and therefore you cannot have a refund. So at that point, I decided to jump in with both feet, do every single stupid exercise they asked me to do, so I could prove it didn't work, and they would have no recourse for not giving me a refund. And then lo and behold, by day 7, I'm like, man, this is so cool. And I decided I was going to give up the accountancy studies and become a hypnotherapist instead. And that was October 2000. So at the point we are now, that was coming up to 19 years ago.
2000.
Yeah.
Hey, you're the same age as Morgan. And you woke up at the same time. Well, you went through, at the same time she did. I think it was
Oh,
99
really?
or 2. Yeah. Yeah. Some of us had to wait till we were 50. So, but everything's relative in the non-linear, anyway, it doesn't
But
matter.
the only reason I heard about them, I was stressed. I was talking to someone. I said to someone, "Oh, I've got this thing called Reiki. I'm going for a Reiki session." I didn't know what it was, and I was working. And the woman I was speaking to, she says, "Oh, my mum's a Reiki teacher." So we have this whole conversation, and during that time, I confessed to her how stressed I was, and she's the one who gave me the number for the NLP training. So it was all just one of those. But if I hadn't have had that conversation with her, it may never have come up. I suspect at 50, I would have been the 50-year-old accountant who was taking a break to go and study personal development. I think it would have found me eventually.
Yeah.
But again, it was that just a chain of events that one, and the day I phoned the company, I phoned out of hours because I didn't want to speak to anyone. I just wanted to leave a voicemail. And a guy called Paul Vernon picked up the phone at like 7 o'clock in the evening. And he then taught me into it. So it was just, it was a series of events that just what I call divine timing that landed me in that room at that particular time. And because I was already at rock bottom, I kind of had nothing to lose. If I'd been my usual guarded self, I think the training would have just gone completely over my head. I would have taken it in theoretically, and I suspect I would have done nothing with it had I not been in the state I was in.
Yeah, which is typical of everybody's wake-up call, are the ones that have had them. I call them traumatic wake-up calls. But what's atypical, like Morgan, it happened in 2000. Everybody else is like 2011, 2012. I didn't even know what the hell ascension was till 2014. Like,
wow.
What does that mean? People would say, you've got ascension symptoms, or your writing is, proving, or you're channeling or something. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just have a big hole in my heart, and I'm lost, and I had the same dark feelings you had, and you're just trying to express it or get it out or something, release that pressure. I want to make 2 points about what you had to say, because I don't want to let them go, without further emphasis. And one is because this is, we do this because even though you had this experience in 2000, first of all, and I just want to give you big props on your humility and openness, but because you're very down to earth. And but the fact is, the things that you went through and felt, there are people that are just, quote unquote, waking up in the last few months or year or so that are going through the same exact thing with the same level of intensity. And so I think it's helpful that they look at someone like you, just like your friends are saying, what, you mean it took you till 32 to come out of your shell? I don't believe you. I'm sitting there thinking the same thing, and then you took the words right out of my mouth. But I think it's important for people to know that we're all human, and that there are some common denominators beyond the I am soul, and that is really that we're all going through this human hybrid soul experience, where we're trying to put 2 and 2 together, and the math was changed while we were sleeping last night. But yeah, so I think that's important. And I also think it's important to mention about the suicidal thoughts. I've had them. I know most of the people I talk to have had them. Some of this, reiteration of what you're saying, I think it also goes out to those of us who've been, quote unquote, awake, because I still see it, I still hear it, and I felt it occasionally as recently as a few months ago, walking around Hawaii. And you imagine walking around in a paradise and your beautiful, divine partners, down the street, and you're thinking, I'm ready. I'm going to go down to the beach tonight, and I'm going to get a 6-pack of beer, and I'm going to just get either a knife or something. I'm gone. If this spaceship's not picking me up, I'm out of here. But I think it's important. And I would imagine you come into this, and you could probably validate this and verify this with the work you do. I've never taken this angle before, so this is really cool. 1,300 shows to flow into something like this. What's it like? I mean, if you were studying this in 2000, you must have been a practitioner for quite some time. What's it like in the evolution of your clientele and your practice, even over the last 10 years or so? And if you could, also address even the last year or so. What are you seeing?
That's a brilliant question, because it really, Todd, it's changed so much. When I first started, now, I think it was a reflection of me. I had a lot of clients when I first started who were sexually abused, because I was from the age of 7 to 17. I had a lot of clients who were afraid of public speaking, because I was right up until age 32. And I had a lot of clients who were getting over really difficult relationship breakups, because that's also what was happening for me at the time. I went into it all. So I would say, if we looked at it like a continuum or a scale, where it's broken in terms of I don't know what to do and feeling hopeless, and then the other end of the scale is let's next level this thing, I was at that end of the scale where people were hitting rock bottom and needed help and support to pick themselves up and put the pieces back together.
Yeah.
And that was, I would say, that was probably the first 9 or 10 years of I was in practice. I basically did relationship coaching, public speaking. And even though that was never the problem that people came with, they would either confess that they were gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever, or they would confess there'd been some kind of sexual trauma.
Yeah.
Then we hit a point, probably 10, 11 years in, where suddenly I start working with people who were perceived to be at the top of the game, but they were coming to see me and saying, I'm just keeping my head above water.
Yeah.
They're one step ahead of their employees. They're one step ahead of their team. Some of them were the CEOs, companies, internationally traded companies, and they were terrified that they were, the words they would say, they're terrified they're going to be found out.
Yeah.
And then, and so now the clients are really people oftentimes who they've been on the path, or they've got a toe on the path, and they are looking for what's next.
Yeah.
And they want to next level their skills, and they want to break through, I guess, our own version of what you might call the glass ceiling. It's about potential. I'd say it's about being more limitless now, rather than just the pieces are broken, I don't know what to do. So it has definitely changed. And I would say in the last 12 months, I would say I'm meeting people who are extremely capable. They're brilliant. They're amazing. A lot of them have actually, when they tell me what they've done, I'm like, whoa, that's impressive. And they're feeling stuck. The way I might put it is it's almost like they feel like they're on a treadmill, been there, seen it, done it before. How is it I haven't resolved X, Y, Z? Or they almost feel in some ways, you said it earlier, 1 step forward, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps back.
Yeah. Well, I said the opposite of that. I hope it's not the way you said it, because that means we're going the other way. But I'm kidding. Yeah,
but they got they just know that it's almost like there's something that is like there's a piece missing. That's the way I might describe it at the moment.
Yeah, I like this. And here I am, like I said, married, and we're almost 4 years since we physically met. And from day one, I guess in a lot of ways it was a kind of a continuous session, and Todd was the patient. So I should know a lot of this stuff. But what kind of struck me, what you said, was that first phase where they would come in and they would say, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this. And I realize now the ingenuity of what I've been through, really consciously, I guess more in the client's chair, actually, even though I've helped other people on a intuitive way over the years, but it's been an unconscious way. But what I'm noticing, what I'm trying to say is, and I think this is important, is what you're saying is to me, sometimes people just need to say it to somebody. They need to say it to somebody. And maybe that's the value of a psychologist or psychiatrist or a therapist or a practitioner, because, wow, I don't know why that just stands out so much right now, but whether it's that first phase or today, to be able to admit something in a safe and comfortable, supported environment, which is what we try to do here, is really important.
I mean, I've got goosebumps when you said that. So you know, but that thing about it, I've been saying it because I did a lot of gang and mediation work. We're bringing rival gangs together or going in and looking at corporate disputes and all that sort of stuff. My magic ingredient, when everybody else had given up, even the police at one of the things I was doing said, I'm sorry, you're on your own. We're not coming. We recommend that you get bulletproof vests and good luck and hire some security. That's how volatile the situation was. And I was the one leading the project. And by the end of the 4 hours, I had the gangs, you know, and the people who were in dispute on the estate in London, what you guys would call the projects. They were all literally breaking bread together. They were eating together. They were drinking together. They were hugging. They were talking. They were conversing. Yeah. And people were like, what just happened here? Even the police then decided to come in and join us. And I said, my secret ingredient was being heard and seen. Yeah. Wow. And I said, the way that you deal with these conflicts is not in the boardroom's important. Don't get me wrong. Yes, it's good to strategize, but I said we need to get out of the boardroom and I need to get these people together. I need you to look into the eyes of another human being, and when you've done that, now let's talk. And it's one that Oprah has been saying for many years as well. When I first heard her say it, I was like, oh my God, I've been doing that for 10 years. Where she said, you know, she said at the end of her shows, even presidents, and she said even Beyonce, because she couldn't believe Beyonce would ask the question, was that okay? In terms of the interview, was that okay?
No, you know, that's interesting. That's it. That's interesting. I'm getting, this is synchronicity, right? This is all synchronicity. I'm stopping you because I want to make sure that I hit these things that
go for it.
We're supposed to. So one is the thing about you know, and we're over here together, Morgan and I. We're in a constant. It's great because we're in a constant relationship where we're individually and jointly transitioning and growing and expanding, and you know, and talking about things and this and that. And one of the things she came up with through some of the interactions we've had over the last few weeks is whether you agree with someone or not, which I totally agree with, the value of allowing them to speak, even if you don't agree, okay? And then I combined that with what you said about that first phase of your practice where, you know, the revelation of, you know, just people being able to say, hey, you know, I was molested as a kid or whatever this deep secret is where they threw away the key and they've never told anybody the value of that. And then this comment you make about Oprah, because, you know, 1,300 plus shows, I get that all the time. People will say, well, how did I do? I'm going to say, you did great. Well, can you give me any pointers? No. Do you want to talk before the show starts? No. We want you, you know, we want you, the authentic, raw, real you. And that's not a fake game. In fact, that to me, like, that's why I don't mind getting up from a mid-morning nap, because I didn't sleep last night because Morgan couldn't keep her hands off me. I'm just kidding. But I don't mind being in the raw because it is natural and it is real. We don't have these masks all the time and all the pomp and circumstance and the spit and polish, you know. So I think these are great reflections. And I want to take it into, you know, real-time intel, which I think the most powerful is this and what we're all going through, because yeah, we know we're eternal and that's fantastic, but we came here for a reason, because the perfection's in the imperfection. So it's this expansion that's happening that we thought was, oh, painful and suffering. And this, oh, wait a minute, we're getting this thing down now. Okay, what do we do with this divinity? And a lot of our revelations and epiphanies come through our day-to-day interactions and painful growth. But so what I was getting at was the importance of speaking and listening, the importance of somebody unlocking that secret door in their heart and allowing all these core values and core experiences and beauty, you know, and pureness of themselves, innocence, genuine, to be let out is awesome. And you throw that into that, the comment people make, which is coming from a self-consciousness, self-value or lack thereof scenario, even the Beyoncés of the world. And then what's happening today? Is there a difference between, or what is the difference between speaking out in the frequency of projection, pain, suffering, where it's not being pulled into yourself, versus sitting down with you as my practitioner and saying, let me tell you what my deepest, darkest secrets are. I guess what I'm saying is, how do we eliminate the gap between the projecting type of vocalization that's rooted in some type of underlying pain, suffering, or what they really need to say, and then the soul bearing stuff that you've heard over the years? How do we bring that together? How do we reduce the drama and the projection and the judgment and all that?
I would definitely say, I think there's actually, I think, less stigma now. And I would say that's partly thanks to Hollywood, because I don't know what it is, but until a celebrity has said it or done it, it's not okay, in many respects. But you've got a lot of, like with something like, let's just say the Me Too movement, for example, you had not only women, but also men. And some quite high profile men coming up. I think Terry Crews was the one that surprised everyone, where he stood up and said, this is what happened to me. Yeah. And so when somebody like that, who has a particular image, and we see him in a particular way, when somebody like that can stand up and be honest, number one, I think it gives people sort of permission. Now, the thing that slightly worried me about the Me Too movement, I thought it was amazing, and I was like, what happens when you come out on social media, when you tweet Me Too, and there's, well done. But then once you switch off your machine, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Said this thing now, you've publicly declared it on social media. Now what? Because one of the reasons a lot of people don't speak is they have the fear that once the lid is off and the genie is out of the bottle, it might be so much and so overwhelming that you don't know what to do with that. And it's an interesting one. When I first started 10 years ago, I had one of those pivotal moments. I did an article for a newspaper, something here called, we have a thing called the Metro. And it was a relationship piece, it's called Breaking Up the Easy Way, where I was working with a journalist who had spent many, many, many years trying to get over a relationship breakup and had no success. We did a one-day breakthrough session and she was completely transformed. And they did a full-page article in the newspaper. The editor called it a girly piece, and he put it in on something like the 3rd or 4th of January when no one was at work. That article brought me clients for nearly 9 years, and 80% of the clients were men. And what that told me was, even though we perceive men to be okay and they're not really into the therapy thing, for me to spend 9 years working predominantly with men, working on this stuff, told me that there's a lot of people walking around out there with what you were calling the mask, and they just haven't had the opportunity to speak and to share and all the rest of it. And so I would say the difference between when you sit with someone like myself, or even someone like you, because I'm presuming when people sit with you, even if they're in a social context, they will get the sense that it's a safe space and it's okay. And I'm always saying to my clients, better out than in. And when they cry, I've got tissue boxes all over the place. Normally they'll apologize and I will say, hold it right there. Why are you apologizing for being human?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've even got, you know, I've got a leopard print tissue box just for the fun of it. So I say, here, hold that, feel the texture, stroke the box, and help yourself to a tissue. And I use humor a lot as well, because I always say to my clients, look, I'm still waiting for the day where someone surprises me with whatever their confessional is. And I say to them, go for it, do your damn bit. Let's see what you got. And at that, they do exactly what you did. They laugh. And then they realize that, okay, maybe it's not a big deal. And sometimes people will spend like 15, 20 minutes going around the houses. When they tell me, my genuine reaction is that it?
Yeah. Are you sure that is your birthday March 10th, 1967?
No, I'm 17th of May, 1968.
Okay, well, it's just like talking to Morgan. It's funny. Well, because I remember when I first met her, and after, because I knew like right away, I knew the first day, or at least that part of me up there did. The human was, holy shit. How am I going to tell her all this stuff that I did, you know? Because I went deep. But I remember it wasn't just a few weeks. And I remember knowing that if I'm going to have this core relationship and rebuild my life from this core relationship of self, where I'm sharing with somebody potentially, that I was going to have to like lay it out there, you know. So I did to the best of my ability several times, and I couldn't get it all out at one time. But I remember the first time, and I pretty much laid it out there, and that's what she said. Is that it? Okay. I'm like, what? I'm like all crying and stuff in a fetal position. Oh my God. But yeah, you bring up something else too. You were just talking about, oh yeah. You know, this thing with I don't know, the way I look at it, it's like, okay, so there's like the old paradigm ran on a codependent frequency, whether you were in a full-blown extreme toxic relationship or not. But everything was like, you know, I do this, you do that. I do this, you do that. Or you had these people that overgave, or you had these people that would overtake. And so that imbalance was there. And I see this frequency as I'm, you know, doing my work in social media. And I think to myself, you know what would be really cool is if they took comments away. Like all you could do is post. And this goes back to what you said a minute ago, when somebody comes out with a Me Too and they open let the genie out of the bottle, and then they're standing there buck naked like the emperor with no clothes, you know. But the power of the silence, take away the comments, the ability to comment, and then everybody puts their stuff out there and can get to that point where it doesn't matter what they think. If I get 1 like or 1 million likes, that's not what it's about. What's it about is unlocking that secret door in my heart and actually having the balls, the faith, the love, and the honor and respect and reverence for myself to put it out there. You know, I think that's I know that's kind of a weird way to explain it, but I think that's actually where we're going. Transparency, full-blown telepathy. And I remember it was about 3 or 4 months ago, with these cycles of whatever they are, you know, solar waves and geomagnetic storms and dates like 888 and all that stuff, you know, and you know, planet alignments and whatever, that there was this period where, man, in these light worker circles, people were like going off, like just, you know. But what happened was, and I'd seen it before, and it's perfectly understandable for all of us, you know. But what was really unique about it was the next day, you saw these people come back and say, hey, I was a real asshole yesterday. And I just want to say, but you know what? It was a powerful impression. And I would love, I think we'll see that, but I really think we'll see where it becomes the norm. And then that goes away. So as we step further up the ladder of evolution to full transparency and full-blown telepathy, but you know, the power of being that initiate of a verbalized transformed energy and sharing that, as opposed to doing our work in the closet, you know, behind that locked door, and actually doing the work, okay, you know, to the best of our ability, but not sharing it, as opposed to coming out and saying, here's my ass, here's my heart, you know, this is what I did, you know, I showed my ass yesterday. Mm-hmm. The power of that to elevate others, not only yourself, is the potential is incredible. And I would imagine you've probably been exposed to that in your work.
Absolutely. I'm just sorry, I was just looking down at the screen, so I just saw something pop up saying, is this where we comment and can we send energy hearts? So I guess that's in the way it's in the chat thing. I just saw something pop up there.
And let me just say, yeah, this is a problem. And you know what? Since we have such a great connection with Marilyn and everybody's here, let me just say, this has gone on too long. Okay.
Yeah.
This has gone on too long. We have been getting knocked off of Facebook for 4 or 5 weeks now. We have been doing this broadcasting for going on 3 years now. And it's time for us to get our own independent site. And I'm just going to say it. We've been trying to do it, and we're just asking for you to join us in this moment to let the universe know it. We're ready for an independent site, independent server, independent stream that is outside of the constructs of social media and the matrix and all that stuff. And love,
well, it's funny you should say that. I've been having a moment with Facebook for the last 3.5 weeks where it will not let me post my email address or the link to my Transformations TM website. It just keeps saying this goes against community standards. This goes against community standards, and that's been going on for nearly a month. And the conversation I've had with several people saying, "Well, Marilyn, maybe it's time you find us an alternative to Facebook." So it has just got like a weird energy at the moment.
Yeah. And I join you there, and that's what we've been working on. I've been talking about it for now since 2016 or 15, I can't remember. But to your point, now I had that same conversation with Facebook and YouTube, and if you'd like, I have this picture that I send them, and it's actually of my ass, and I just send it to them, and usually they stop sending me. I'm just kidding. But back to the. So let's see, what time is it? Yeah, we're good. So, you know, first of all, let me ask you this, and I think it's Amanda that asked the question. Yeah, Zoom, I didn't finish the whole statement because I'm still a little bit groggy, but you can comment in Zoom, you can't put up little hearts, and you can't stay on Facebook, so it's just kind of like pick your poison. So let me ask you this first, because I don't want to take this the wrong direction. Do you first of all, tell us what you do from a practitioner standpoint, and do you do the work online? Would be, yeah.
In terms of practitioner standpoint, I now trainer or practitioner about 20 different modalities. So it started off with NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy. I then became fascinated with this thing called Huna, H-U-N-A. Some people also know an aspect of Huna, which is Ho'oponopono. So I've been out to Hawaii a few times to study Huna. I've done things like EFT, DNA theta healing, Reiki, emo trance, energetic NLP, future life progression, past life regression, soul plan reading, tarot, archetypal profiling. I also teach photo reading and accelerated learning. So there are a lot of modalities in there, and also running parallel to that, which is going to sound like a really weird juxtaposition. In 2003, I also started working as a management consultant and a Prince 2 project manager, working in central and local government, designing and delivering corporate training and executive coaching and corporate away days. So they've run parallel, like next side by side.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting mix, and one of the reasons with the modalities, I stuck with the 3 that I'd first trained in for probably the first 5 or 6 years. And then I realized that one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
And so then brought a few things on stream. And then it's like, man, there's a whole world out there. And just absolutely love the idea of learning. And one of the reasons I think I love learning and I'm making the most of it is because when I was in my 20s, I was diagnosed with what was thought to be early onset Alzheimer's. and my doctor has said there's nothing else he could do for me. So when I discovered photo reading and accelerated learning, it changed everything. And that's why I'm like, now I have the ability to learn, I'm making the most of it. And so that was one of the reasons as well. And in terms of, do I work online? For the first 10 years I was in practice, I only worked with people face to face, one to one. And then, funnily enough, I've also been writing for newspapers and magazines for the last 16 or so years. And a woman phoned me up. She had an American accent, but I live in London, so it's very eclectic here. And she said, I was reading your article in Psychology's magazine. I think it was amazing. I would love to book a breakthrough session. I was like, oh, fantastic. I said, where are you based? She said, I'm in Birmingham. And I said, oh, no problem. You just get a straight train. And she went, no,
Alabama.
Alabama. And I was like, whoa. And so I said to her, I said, look, here's the deal. I said, we can do a one-day breakthrough session. My suggestion, because back in those days, we didn't have Skype. So I said, we're doing it by phone. So I said, my suggestion is we do blocks of like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and we split it over 4 or 5 sessions. And I said, look, I've never done this before by phone. If it doesn't work, I will give you your money back. No harm, no foul. I swear to God, to this day, that is one of the best breakthrough sessions I've ever done in my entire life. And it flipped everything. And now 99% of what I do, when I'm not obviously running in-person workshops, is I work by telephone, I work by Skype, or I work in my online webinar meeting room. So I rarely now see people face to face. And the sessions are just as powerful, if not even more so, because, you know, the energy travels. It doesn't need me and you to be right in front of each other.
Absolutely. Do you, you mentioned that that was one of the biggest breakthrough sessions you ever had. Do you find, I guess what I'm saying is, do you, as the universe, as we go through everything, the universe is always speaking to us. I mean, you know, I mean, we hear this, we know this, we're learning the depth of this more and more every day. But as a practitioner, do these things that are coming through your clients, are they speaking to you? You're expanding? Are you getting messages for you that like, oh, I didn't know that, you know, things like that. Why am I hearing this, you know, and things like that. Do you get a lot of that?
I call it my other brain. I can be speaking and I will say something and my other brain goes, note to self. You know, like, did you hear that?
Yeah.
You know, so that has always been running as a factor, and I actually invite that. And the instruction is, okay, I hear you, shelve that while I'm focusing on what I'm doing. Yeah. When I'm finished in this interaction and my attention then is back on me, we'll sort that out. So there's always been that aspect of hearing. And one of the things, when I did my training back in 2000, the trainer said, your clients will reflect your stuff. I had no idea what that meant. And then sat down with my first few clients and they're talking about stuff. And either I'd been through it, which is where I then recognized the patterns with who was coming to me. There were even times I was going through it. So I'm like, oh, holy crap.
That's amazing. But that's amazing insight. That makes me, it's like being in, you know, like being in grade school and you're like in, you know, like you're, and then the principal, the speaker comes on like, you know, Marilyn, please report to the principal's office after class is over. It's like, note to self, work's not done when this session's over. I got to say too, this is the first time we've had more people in the Zoom room than we have on Facebook Live. That's probably got something to do with Facebook knocking people off, but that's interesting based on what we were just talking about and the direction this collective energy is sending us as we all expand together. Yeah, this is cool. Now, let me ask you this one. So how do you, as a practitioner, how do you assist people in discovering the best form of intelligence that they receive from the universe actually comes out of their own mouth, even if they're talking about somebody else? Or maybe another way to put it is, how do you assist people in discovering that their projections are the big elephant in the room that they're not looking at within themselves? And I speak from a lot of experience, and I have a lot of scar tissue that I don't want other people to have. So I'm asking a professional.
Basically, I actually remember one of what I call those pivotal moments. I'm coaching someone and they are sat and they're telling him about their awful bosses, their awful jobs, their awful work colleagues, their awful friends, and then they went to this job, and then they, you know, had this confrontation, and then they went to the next job, and that boss was an a-hole, and then they went to the next job. And I'm sat there and I'm like, okay. So I said, now that's very interesting. I says, can you tell me, in all of these scenarios and the 5 or 6 jobs that you've mentioned, because they all ended in what we call here disciplinary action, where, you know, either he's going to sue them or he gets sacked or whatever. And I said, can you tell me, is there a common denominator in any of those scenarios? And he genuinely went,
yeah.
and then he started laughing and he went, me? I went, I'm saying nothing. However, in all of the stories you've told me, the boss was different, the work colleagues were different, the friends were different. He even had a different country involved. And I said, it just seems that there might be something that's common. And I remember when I did his timeline therapy session, we're sitting down, I'm explaining how timeline therapy works. And I said, so take a deep breath in and close your eyes. And he closed his eyes for about 10 seconds. Then he opened his eyes and he said, this isn't going to work for me. I said, look, I said, I'm going to say this as politely as I can. Close your eyes, close your mouth, follow the instructions, and complain to me after we've done the process. Is that okay? And just go with the flow. And he was like, oh, okay then. So he sits there, eyes closed. He opens his eyes at the end, and there's like, I can see he's welling up. And he says, Marilyn, he says, can I, because I don't ask what people have seen. If they want to share, they share. He says, can I share with you what happened? I went, yeah, sure. He said, I went back to slavery times. And he said, my family, he said, I watched them being hung, raped, killed, da-da-da. And he said, I couldn't do anything to help them because I knew if I did do anything, I would be the next one strung up. And he said, I felt emasculated. And I was gutted as I watched my children, my wife, my brothers, my friends all systematically be cut down. And I said, look, I said, whether or not that's really true, whether or not you really were a slave, that's kind of irrelevant now.
That's right.
The fact of the matter is he recognized the pattern that he was going to get in there first and nobody was ever going to come near him again. And so it was quite interesting the way it played out. But again, it was the whole thing that he could see why those projections, the anger, the venom, the, you know, it's like he was like a touch plate, just waiting to be lit, waiting to be lit, waiting to be lit. And in that metaphor, I'm going to call it, it all suddenly made sense to him. And he realized if he were to change what was going on inside of him, the ripple effect of that would most likely be that things around him started to change as well. So I'm never going to come up and, well, no, that's a lie. My other brain was like, don't lie. There are times where I might go, dude, come on now. What's going on here? But there are times where I just let the client come to their own realization that, oh, look, it's me.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah, that's I can totally resonate with what that guy was saying. You know, I remember when I was on the streets when I first woke up, and I used to have this thing because, like, I knew I was connected, like, you know, like seeing these ascendeds, and we're sitting down for coffee every day, and they're talking to me, and I know I'm in my own world, but I knew it was real. But then I'd go off into the streets and the world, and I had this. I used to call it the rage against the machine. And I'm like, somebody F with me. I'm like 50 years old, getting like 8 fights in 7 months, you know, and it was this thing that you're talking about. And had I known you or known Morgan or somebody that could explain to me, but I remember later on having that recollection that that's what it was. It was like this, what's that? What do the pessimists say? It's not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They say, do unto others before they do unto you. Something like that. It's like, don't look at me the wrong way, you know, or I'm coming at you, you know, but energetically. But yeah, I can totally see that. And so that really freed him up, you know, to understand this in terms of energy, it sounds like. And that's why your language and method of communication and explanations is really just like Morgan's. this whole dialogue and way of seeing things in this, what I'm starting to call the energy game, is something I think that is being, we're at a point collectively, there's enough people out there that are ready to hear it. When I mean ready to hear it and understand it and apply it, you know, it takes the whole personal thing out, you know, more and more and more. You don't look at, oh, he pissed me off, or she did this, or he said that, or she said that, you know. You can look at everything as energy, and once that happens, then you say, like you told, like the guy came to his senses and said, hey, you know, if I can change my energy, basically everything changes around me. And I think that was a big struggle for me when I met Morgan, was, you know, even though I had done some things for myself and cleared a lot of shadow, I just didn't know I had, like, you know, Mount Everest to clear, that the simplicity of the process and the quickness of the process was something that my human brain couldn't get around for a while. Like, you know, I'd be like, hey, let me tell you what happened. She's like, hey, you want to tell the story, or do you want to clear it? I'm like, what? Okay, so close your eyes, and what do you see? Oh, I see a triangle and it's spinning and it dropped into my heart. Are you perfectly happy to clear this now? Yes. Look for a sign. Boom, it's done. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You know, it's done. All right. But I think that's for me, and I got to believe there's, as individual goes, so goes the collective. I got to believe that brothers and sisters, I mean, because of the conditioning we've had and the trial and errors and the school of hard knocks and all that stuff, that, you know, it's literally like that old movie, that show Bewitched with Elizabeth Montgomery, where she twinkle her nose and everything's done. But it actually can happen that way. And I've been blessed enough to be exposed to that, and then, you know, take on that responsibility for myself, which is, I think, another thing that you're talking about that's different, especially for having doing this for so long, is that you just said it a minute ago, you let them find it, right? Which empowers them, doesn't it?
And often people say, what do you think? Now, when I'm, even to this day, because I think the reason I still write notes when I speak to clients, I just jot keywords down or draw pictures or whatever, is years ago, it's probably about a year and a half after I've been in practice, when I first started, because nobody knew what a hypnotherapist really did apart from help people give up smoking. So that's what I did as well. And I've written these notes, and I'm speaking to this woman, and every time I mentioned her mother, she would start crying. And I wrote, you know, I sat there and I wrote, client crying, ... still crying, big cry, ugly cry. So I've got all these dotted around in my notes. She comes back, we had one more session to do, and she came back and said, I don't think the breakthrough sessions worked. I want a refund. Now, I'd been talking to her for about half an hour at that point, and I knew I could say all of the trigger words, and she was absolutely fine, no reaction whatsoever. So I said, okay, before we do that, can I just show you something? And I showed her my notes. And I said, you see that there? What does that say? She went, client crying. I went, that's you. And she could see it was her notes. And I said, what does that say there? She went, still crying. And we went through this, and she went, oh, she said she couldn't even remember. And it'd only been like 3 weeks before, because you know when you're saying it so quick, she couldn't even remember how bad it was. So in her mind, because thunder hadn't come down and struck the earth and everything didn't start spinning, she was like, you haven't done anything. Yet everything in her life was different. And so it was one of those reminders that it doesn't have to be, you know, gnashing of teeth. Oftentimes it is seamless, where you feel like you've just had a conversation. Yeah. But then suddenly it's like, what's the problem again?
Yeah. Yes. But, you know, and that's true, you know, and then, you know, and the other thing, I think that in Morgan used to tell me this all the time, was that it's going to take you, you know, we'd have a session, and then I'd be like, okay. And she'd say, it's going to take 2 to 5 days before you integrate, the human integrates it. I'm like, no, I got this. No, but it actually does. It's like that whole egoic thing that comes in, like you did something really, you know, hey, you did something and you're a badass, you know. But so that's the one thing I get out of it. And Well, the fact that that in I thought in my own right that, and I'm sure others do, and this is to your point about this client, that I remembered everything in my life, but I didn't realize that, how brilliant we are and how we can compartmentalize things and put things behind these locked doors and have no recollection. And then you're sitting on a friend's couch and all of a sudden you smell something and it brings back something and you're like, oh my, next thing you're in tears going, oh my God. I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing. So to be able to pull people out of that, or help assist people to begin to, to remove those subconscious, things that are entrenched in the subconscious and such. I mean, that's like, that's a powerful thing to be able to do. So, people like you, I think they deserve a lot of credit.
And if you mentioned Bewitched, that was one of my favorite programs when I was growing up, and now I run something called the Magic and Gratitude Group, because magic has always been one of those things. But for me, when I realized that it was possible to change, because if you'd met me when I was 31 or even in May when I was 32, I would have said, I'm quiet, I'm shy, I'm introvert, you don't know the past I've had, there's nothing, that's it. I thought I was set in stone. And so when I realized it was possible to change, one of the reasons why I decided to give up the accountancy studies and become a hypnotherapist was because, like I said to myself, if I can change, and I was dragged in screaming, it was not where I wanted to be. And I thought, if with that attitude and that mindset, I can change, imagine the power of working with people who actually want to change and are not dragged in screaming. So that for me was a big driver. And because I don't know if you have it in the States, we have something here called the Samaritans, sometimes known as the suicide hotline. I had phoned
yeah. Oh, you did.
And a year and a half later, I became a Samaritans volunteer, where I was the person answering the phone, and I was the person answering the door and inviting people in for a cup of tea and biscuits, because it was so profound that there was an organization, because I didn't want to speak to my family. The thing about speaking to someone, once you said the words, you can't take them back.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're the problem or part of the problem. And so I couldn't speak to them, but to be able to pick up the phone and talk to a stranger who had no idea who I was not going to judge me for anything I said, was not going to hold it against me, was not going to feel bad it was just so cathartic that I thought, imagine being able to help people do that. And that was one of the big drivers for me to kind of have a complete change of direction.
Yeah, they do have it here, and because I remember, I came out on Facebook basically when I hit the street. I just got out and I said, okay, I'm about to go homeless. Here we go. And at the time, I only had friends. I only had maybe 200 friends, and they were all from high school, maybe a few people locally. But I remember people kept putting that call 1-800 such and such Todd. And I'm like, what? I'm all right, And of course, I found out real quick that I had many of those, nights and stuff where but I you know what? I never did that. And if that ever comes up with anybody with me again, I'm going to tell them they should call that.
Honestly, I mean, I think it's what we say. We have a saying here: horses for courses. Everything isn't for everyone, but I'd say, look, if you have no one to talk to, ring them up. You can talk for as long as you like. I happen to know now, because the shift where I was working was you do a 4-hour shift, apart from night duty where you start at 11 o'clock at night, and we worked right through till 8 o'clock the next morning. But when you do a shift in the, a regular shift is 4 hours. I know now that I kept someone well over their shift, because I was on that phone for 4.5 hours. That's a long time to have another human being listening to your outpouring. And so I haven't, and I will probably never, ever, ever, ever know who I spoke to. I am eternally grateful for that person who held the space and with the Samaritans, you're not allowed to talk. So when I said to friends, I'm going to become a Samaritan's volunteer, they all laughed. They're like, you do know you have to keep your mouth shut, right? It was like, I am capable of other, ways of being, but you're not allowed to talk. You're not giving advice. You're not having an opinion. You just hold the space. And some of my calls, 4.5, 5 hours, basically, I probably said half a dozen words. That must be very difficult for you. It's okay, I'm listening. That was it.
Yeah. Wow, that takes a lot to do that. What is your perspective on protection? Okay, so what I mean by that is, I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm really just trying to expand. That's what we do in the show. I got to burn some sage. I got to, get some rabbit's feet. I got to, cook some stuff in the kitchen and, I got to call an Archangel Michael. I got to do this. I got to do that. What are your thoughts on, and there's no right or wrong. I just want to get your perspective on it. How do we protect ourselves? Do we need to protect ourselves? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm kind of relieved that you opened with that, because when I get asked that a lot, and I say, look, I'm not the person to ask. Let me tell you why. Because my take on it is, if you walk around going, oh my God, I need protection, because you kind of get what you focus on. If you're thinking about being in danger and being attacked and the likelihood is you kind of invite a bit more of that energy in your direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say to them, and I remember once I had a lovely client, but one of the things, it was probably the 3rd or 4th session. I said, hey, how are you? She went, oh, I left my rose quartz at home. I went, hold it right there. I says, your task is to leave that rose quartz at home for at least the next 2 weeks, because suddenly it became a crutch. The premise was, I'm now going to have a bad day because I left the rose quartz at home. And I'm like, now it's gotten out of hand. Yeah. And so my premise is, I don't walk around doing this. I have got, don't get me wrong, I've got, is it here? Oh, it's up in the other room. I have got a sage stick, but my thing around protection was, I don't have a big protection ritual because I don't hold the belief that there's stuff, waiting to get me. Now, the thing I did do at the Samaritans, because I realized of the training to become a Samaritan is very intense. They throw everything at you because you've got to be ready when you hit that phone. And one of the things that happened, I walked in for my shift and they had, if you had like kindergarten where you have the coat hooks where kids hang their jackets, they had like four hooks as you go into the staff entrance. So I look at the hooks and I says, do you know what? I'm going to have a Samaritan's cap. When I arrive at the Samaritans, I'm going to metaphorically put the cap on. I'm ready to hold the space, and I'm going to be like Teflon. So I can hear what you're saying. I can hold the space, but it is not going to come into my energy field. It's going to just slide right off. Yeah. And I did that from day one. And so that, if you want to call it that, that was my form of protection. When I first did psychic development workshops and that sort of thing, I liked the idea of the energy bubble. So it's like, it's only permeable one way. I can send gorgeous energy out, but I'm not going to allow anything to come in my direction that is not for my greatest and highest good. Yeah. So if it's that barrier and goes, it's gone. And by the same token, in terms of the work that I do with Huna, let's say, when you get initiated into the Huna, they have this thing called the Avaiku, the Huna guides. Now, I'd never thought overly, I just thought, oh, that's cool, I've got some guides, yay, hey. I never really thought about it, but occasionally I go, oh, do you know what? Or when I'm doing remote work with clients, I'll send the guides over and clients will actually feel them. And so they are in, I guess, a funny sort of way. They've like got my back. But again, I'm not thinking about it. I'm not doing rituals about it. I just made a decision that good stuff will come my way. Anything that's not for my greatest and highest good, please clear that out of my energy field. Yeah. I'm going to be like a repellent. But in terms of the over-reliance on rituals, I'm not a fan of that, because I think it's so easy for it to go the other way, and it invokes a sense of fear if somebody hasn't put all the crystals out and didn't burn it and spin for 7 times and and it's nice. I always say to my clients, look, if it's fun and it enhances your life, smudge away. throw those crystals around with gay abandon. If, however, you now become a slave to it, I think we've tipped too far.
Yeah.
So, that's why I say I'm not the person to ask, because I'm not a big rituals. I'm not running around doing stuff. I think I'd say I've got more of a belief that I'm going to be in the right place at the right time. And if something's not for me, I'll do an elegant side swerve.
Yeah. And so, like, let's use the example of a couple of different examples that are similar. So you said about the Huna work, or when you're doing remote work, or you're doing work online, whatever. So your guides are going over to the client. Okay, so now I can remember 7 years ago when I opened up and I was doing a lot of dimensional work. I didn't have any training or anything, but I remember doing the same thing. I'd get someone on the phone. This was before I even got on the internet, and I would send my team over. And so as you were explaining that, I thought, okay, there's two different faces of kind of the same process or whatever, the same thing as we're talking about the subject. My question is, that team that you're sending over with the remote work at the Huna, and the team I was sending over, which was my group of angels that I could be, whatever, are they us? We command them to do it, and therefore it is a projection of our own energy and intention and heart. Or do you think do you think the guides are separate from us?
I'm going to say yes and yes. The reason I'm going to say yes and yes, because there's an element of me, the Avaiku will not go where they're not invited. Now, I often get lots of requests. My mum, my dad, my father, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, my grandfather is sick. Can you please send energy? Mm-hmm. I used to just say no at first, and until I figured out that, well, of course you can do it, but it's now about permission. But they don't just go, they will go because I invite them to go. I send them somewhere. So there's an element of me that goes as well. Yeah. And this is just my way of thinking about it. I also believe it's part of higher self, collective consciousness, whatever, because I'm not the one doing it. I'm not sitting here going hocus pocus focus. I'm just like, oh, that's cool. I set my intention, but I believe there's an energetic force that then comes in to meet that. It's not, if everything I did and all the miraculous transformations for my clients was down to me, I think I'd be done by now. I wouldn't be able to work a 15-hour day, 29 days a week.
You'd be an accountant. You'd be counting pennies.
So I don't think it's me. I think I'm the facilitator, part facilitator. I might say like I'm almost like a conduit. I don't want to use the word channel because my clients often say, oh my God, you're channeling, because I just thought that and you said it out loud. Yeah. I don't think of it in that way, but that's the way people often describe it. So I would say I'm a conduit for the energy.
Yeah,
it's not all down to me.
And some of those the conduits look different. Like a conduit could be a poet, or a conduit could be a hands-on healer or whatever. I remember when my journey first started, I met a psychic, and we had some history, although we didn't know each other. And I often think about that. She had a teenage boy that had transitioned, which was the face of the universe that came to me to start, hello. And so what I'm getting at is, what I noticed though was that whatever this was that was designed by me and other souls involved to open me up, that in the transition, this psychic was a transmitter. And I controlled the communication. So in other words, whatever I sought, whether I verbalized it or not, was received by the transmitter, sent out and brought back, you know what I mean? So I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. You know what I mean? So, but it makes sense what you're saying. And then as I evolved and I look at other people, that's what I see. And a lot of them will say that. They say, hey, it's not me, I'm just a conduit. Or like you said, I'm a facilitator. And I think that's actually true. It's actually. That's
But I
actually
have a friend who sees energy. Now, until this happened, I just thought, oh, that's nice. I went to Hawaii. They initiated me into some guides. I've got some of Aiku. Great. Didn't really give, and I never told anyone how many they were, what they were about, never said a word to another human being. I'm at a training a few years later, and I've got a friend who sees energy, and I'm saying to him, oh, I booked a session with a clairvoyant, and she phoned my best friend, unbeknownst to me, and said, I'm trying to work with Marilyn. I can't get in. I called another clairvoyant I know. She couldn't get in either. They couldn't figure out what was going on. So they then asked my friend, and can she help, and da 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 da. The guy I'm speaking to who sees energy, he said, oh, for some reason they didn't like what she was doing, and so they closed ranks around you and they wouldn't let anyone in. Then he told me how many there were, and he described each of them to a T in terms of their properties, their personality, their role, and I'd never told another soul. And that was in 2009. I went over to Hawaii in 2005, and then again in 2009. So I think I was speaking to him a year later. And he described them all. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, maybe it's not just in my imagination. Maybe there is something as well that does exist in some energetic form.
So like a monad type thing, something like that. Because I know I've experienced that when I didn't know what the word meant. A lot like what you're talking about. There were six of them. They each spent a couple of weeks with me. There was some facilitator involvement to a point, and then it just did it on its own, and had a couple of similar experiences where they were there, like they were like guarding me. And people were like, okay, wait a minute, and so, but also I see the, so it's, and then later on, like having experiences with Morgan, mutual dimensional experiences where we've stepped into the monad, and seeing people that both are incarnated and those that are not, like more like your guides, like divine essences, or particular spiritual archetypes, or whatever you want to call it. So I think there's something to do with that, our connection and embodiment, but it works both ways. Like we're embodying that, and it's embodying us, and there's some type of core circle or core family or monad or whatever you want to call it. So maybe that's what that stuff is. I don't know.
And there are times, one of the things, I mean, I've jokingly said it, but I'm sort of being serious as well. I says, look, I think the big truth, the elephant in the room, is that no one knows for sure. Because I could say, look, somebody could say, I totally believe in angels. Don't get me wrong. Archangel Michael is a picture of him behind me. However, if you said to me, Marilyn, bring Archangel Michael on camera now and shovel over, let him sit next to you, let's see him, let's talk. I can't do that. Nobody's been able to do that. And so I think the big thing I've always said is nobody knows for sure. Even someone who's had a near-death experience, I believe them. I hear them. It makes sense. But do any of us know for sure what really happens when we transition? I'm going to put my hat on the table and say, no, I don't think anybody does. We can believe, but we don't know 110%.
I'm with you. And let me just say back to the comments. We're going to close out in a second, but back to the comments on Facebook. You guys who keep getting knocked off. The Zoom is on the pinned comment. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, what I would describe as the consciousness of Archangel Michael's what gave me the name Soulogy. It told me what it meant,
Oh, lovely.
And I had plenty of other experiences with him. Most of them were very intense experiences involving authoritative energy. But anyway.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But anyway, but I get your point, because, and I remember doing, I do spirit walks, so I don't do so many anymore. I'm going to start again, but where I would just go out and turn on the camera and basically share my spirit walk, which is how I started the whole thing by myself in solitude, though. And I remember doing one, because that's conduit. I'm in conduit mode when that happens, And I remember saying what you're saying, and a lot of people might call them rants and stuff. And I was like, bottom line is we don't know shit, you know? I mean, nobody, anyone that says they know, run from them. You know what I mean? Oh, I got it all figured out and all that. And I said, how do we know that we're eternal? And on the other end of the spectrum, how do we know we're not worm dirt? You know? And then it came in, it was like, okay, well then, but how do we not know that whatever it is that we will be isn't predicated 100% on what we believe, the thoughts we carry forth, you know? So it is. And then, you know, what it always brings me back to is, well, if you don't know, what do you got? This is what I got right now. I got Morgan in the next room. I'm talking to you. We're chilling. And this is it. That's it. And it takes that whole cliche out of, oh, live in the moment and be present in the present. You know what? It takes it all away. It becomes effortless and unconscious, like riding a bicycle. You know, you just jump on it and you're going. And to me, it's like the dog chased its tail the whole time. And now we caught the tail and we're biting. Oh, wait a minute. You know, it's that simple, you know. But and to me, that's kind of going back to that question I asked you about, have you seen a change in your practice and your clientele? I'm not a practitioner. You know, my thing is different, you know, but I do read energy. I do see the crowd, so to speak, I guess, in what I do, and always have. But it seems like that infinite, beautiful simplicity that is the way it works is actually becoming, you know, it's becoming something you can see, touch, and feel. You can see it in people. And I don't know if you see that, you know, more recently
Well, I definitely think we're able to have, how can I say, weirder conversations, because it got, when I first started, if I said NLP, people go, NL what? If I said a hypnotherapist, they go, oh, don't look at me. Now, NLP practitioners, even NLP trainers, you know, I did master practitioner trainers training in NLP, hypnosis, and timeline therapy. Now they're kind of 10 a penny. And everyone, you know, has even heard of a coach, and many people have had a coach. So I think now the world is different. The stuff that was kind of out there and a bit weird and taboo when I first started is now kind of normal.
Yeah.
I might push the boundaries a little bit more. Even things like past life regression, people are now more open to that idea. Future life regression, it's like, okay, when I say I'm a soul plan reader, oh, that's interesting, rather than, huh? Or laughing, people are genuinely interested and go, oh, what's that? What does your soul plan tell you? And I'm like, everything, you know. Yeah. So it's not weird. It's not as weird as it used to be. And so I'm not the only weird one in the room anymore. There's more of us, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. There are. Absolutely. And you can find them all here on this channel. Yeah, it's funny. We were blessed to sit down with my youngest child and her boyfriend. That was a little difficult. I'm just kidding. And my sister, who I hadn't seen in a few years, and we're out here in LA for the time being. And she's been out here for years and years, and she's in the entertainment business. She's a production manager and has been for many years. And so we were talking about this TV taping that we're going to Saturday night with Sandra Walter. She invited us for us to go. Thank you, Sandra. And it's a new type of broadcast or program called, I think, Optimistic, you know, with a play on the words, Mystic, M-Y-S-T-I-C. And I think she's in the first episode. And so I was telling her about it, and her and her partner, both in the industry, said what, you know, like, we would like to start doing stuff like that. The industry would like to start doing stuff like that, but they don't know how people will take it. So my point is, she went a little deeper, and what she was really talking about was like pulling cards and the fortunes, you know, still that old school, you know, stuff that you would associate with, you know, it being, you know, a cult or being weird or that type of thing. It's not this type of stuff, not the type of stuff you do, energy work. And these are the type of things I'd love to see into the mainstream.
But I mean, even you guys now, you've got there's a show called The Healer. There's Hollywood Clairvoyant, whatever he calls himself, but there's a guy who's doing big stadiums where he's doing medium. I think it's called Hollywood Medium, I think it's called. So in America, you've got a lot of these shows coming forth, and there's something I do. I've got like an online membership group, and the favorite day of the week is Tarot Tuesday, where I sit on Facebook Live and I just do tarot readings for anyone who'd like a tarot reading. When I tell you, even my jaw hits the floor every single month, because there'll be times, I remember it was October, I think 2016 when I first started. I'm reading for someone who wasn't even on the call. I don't know where, she's just doing what she's doing. And I said, I don't know why, but this card is really about organic vegetables. She watches the recording. She says, Marilyn, on my way home, I suddenly felt the urge to go and buy organic vegetables. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. We did one a couple of months ago, and I'm saying, I don't know why, but I get the sense you really need to start having some afternoon naps, and you don't strike me as a napping type. She comes onto the Facebook Live halfway through. She hadn't seen the reading, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late, Marilyn. I had an afternoon nap. I start laughing and went, did you just make that up? And she went, no, totally. And what I did a couple of months ago, well, no, last September now, I went back because it was, people would watch the recording, they go, spot on, boom, amazing, nailed it. That's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly, and the readings were all completely different. And I sat down, I went and listened to what I said, and I looked at the cards, and I put a blog together, and I did a side-by-side comparison of what I said and what they said. You could line them up and they were pretty much identical. That happens every single month and has been happening for the last 2.5 years. When you get to that point, there's the point you have to go, you could not make this up. Because I'll say something weird like, there was one woman, I said, oh God, it's like the Cinderella complex. I said, you really need to outsource, you need help, you need assistance. She went, Marilyn, and she doesn't mind me using her name. Her name is Kay Westmoreland. She said, Marilyn, you're not going to believe it. Today, I interviewed someone and spoke to someone about outsourcing and becoming an assistant. And so it is so ridiculously spot on. I have no explanation for it, apart from to say we're back to the Jung and collective consciousness, where I think there's a stream that runs above our heads and we can dip in. And we can all dip in at the same time, and then we're going to get basically almost like the same thought form.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can
describe. That would make sense. That would make sense. And I think maybe that's part of too, like for instance, if I'm sitting in this chair and doing show after show after show, I'm seeing a little glimpse of that collective vortex that's formed, and, it makes sense. It all makes sense. But it doesn't.
So I do think the world is changing, and even we've got the BBC here. Last year they did an article saying, with the advent of Trump as president in America and Brexit, more people in business are turning to tarot readers to help them get a bit of perspective, certainty, glimpse into the future. That was an article that was put out by the BBC.
Wow, that's trippy. So how's that connection made? Brexit and Trump.
Well, people are uncertain.
So they're looking for a non-traditional or an alternative they haven't tried. Okay, yeah, that makes
absolutely sense. They're looking for something to hold on to. What does the future hold? Where are we going? What does all of this mean? And according to the BBC, people were reverting back to things like tarot.
Yeah. Wow, this is thank you for putting up with me. I don't usually go this long, 1.5 hours, and I'm a little bit out of it.
I'm just going to have a quick look through these comments. I haven't been reading them. I've just seen them like whizzing.
Facebook.
So I'm in Zoom chat. So somebody.
Zoom chat. Yeah. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of comments in the.
Jung is an amazing guide. It may sound weird, but Dr. Jung, Chirfi Leary, and Black Mountain College.